You are watching CIOTV by Enterprise IT World, a production of Accent Info Media.
If you grow, you might be successful, you might not. But the high possibility is you will. If you start shutting down and you stop doing everything, you guaranteed will fail.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to CIOTV.live, a production of Accent Info Media. Today I have a special guest with me. His name is Mubarik Hussain, Director IT Bloom Holding, UAE. To give a perspective of Mr. Mubarak, he is one of the seasoned IT leaders, I'll say. He's a highly versatile, award-winning IT leader and CIO who has successfully positioned IT at the forefront of business transformation with a deep understanding of how to combine challenging business and technical requirements. He's a thought leader and speaker on digital transformation who advocates for consultative approach and brings together diverse cross-functional teams to enhance profitability, efficiency with reducing cost. He's also a charter member of Oxbridge Angels, which supports the startup ecosystem. In his illustrious career, he has received many awards, and most recently one is COVID-19 Superhero Summit and Awards MIA 2020. Mr. Mubarik, welcome to CIOT, and thanks a lot for sparing your valuable time with us.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the introduction, Sajay. Good to see you again. It's nice to be a part of your events.
Likewise, same here. So my first question goes to you. Being a holding company, an IT and senior leader, current situation hasn't been that great. But what I heard that your company has successfully delivered the project back in February. And it has got a lot of bearing with a backend, with a data center, with the infrastructure that you have. You must have enabled them, you must have managed them, you must have made everything available to the users. So in this pandemic, how have you managed, how have you monitored, and how have you made the technology available to the IT users within your organization?
So thank you for the question. I think as probably every company, every CIO would agree, it's been a challenging few months. One of the things I've always advocated, along with yourself and many CIOs, are the benefits of digital platforms, digital ecosystems, digital transformation. And I think for us, I would say that even pre-pandemic, we had always promoted such sort of platforms, sort of future-proofing your infrastructure, moving towards cloud, moving towards systems that are elastic, available 24/7, any regions in the world. Not with the thinking that a pandemic would happen, but with a thinking of resiliency, with a thinking of availability, with a thinking of reducing costs. But all of these systems we put in place, whether it's Office 365 platforms, whether it's a SAP S/4HANA on cloud, whether it's our other ERPs that we run in-house, Falcons or educational systems, ISAMs, managed by cloud-based elastic systems that helped us transition relatively smoothly, I would say, to working remotely, to enabling business to continue. We sort of had indications that things were going to go this way towards lockdown. We felt that back in January, February, as events sort of unfolded around the world. So we started to assess all our systems, but fortunately, I think we didn't have to scramble to put in place core infrastructure. Yes, there were mass deployments of devices. Yes, with our teaching and the large volume of 8,000 odd students and teachers and end users, there was lots of deployment of devices, but with our real estate, with our property management, facilities management, our core systems for our holding company and our group companies, they were already on these highly available cloud platforms, and we were able to connect quite easily and transition quite smoothly. We had video conferencing capabilities. We utilized the capabilities of the systems that we had in place, the full suite. We had good security in place, so we had managed service providers as well working with us to monitor security perimeter and the state of our security. But we were able to deliver. I think, yes, it was challenging, but like I say, fortunately, we had made the decision to go with certain platforms that enabled the transition to be relatively, I think, smooth in terms of being able to continue business.
Good thing, Mr. Mubarak, that you said that there was a sense for you that something very great, unusual coming on your way and you are prepared. But just I want to delve a little deep into your infrastructure as to how does it look like? Is it on-prem or hybrid or a cloud infrastructure? What is exactly your BCP plan? What was and which is continuing, and what is your DX? Or the along with DX, also CX. What is the customer satisfaction? Customer is the biggest element in the success of your organization.
Agreed. I think this was something that we have a hybrid infrastructure. So we do have an colo on-prem DC, but our primary applications, our primary platforms are on cloud infrastructure, SaaS infrastructures, cloud infrastructure. So that was a transition I prefer anyway, because you pay for what you use. It's highly available. You take away the thought of what happens with expansions. Now, if you look at the current environment, if we were just totally reliant on on-prem, the challenges with logistics, just pure logistics, moving equipment, replacing hardware, we didn't have to consider any of that. Yes, there was a big expansion in terms of usage, but that was already taken care of because these SaaS solutions or these cloud-based solutions enabled that sort of expansion without the need for us to move hardware. Yes, customer experience, I think ultimately, yes, whether they're students or teachers or whether they're end retail clients, we had the ability to reach out to deliver remote teaching, remote learning. I think there was a challenge, I would say, in our case in terms of becoming familiar with the new tools, whether they're Office 365, Teams, whether they're Google Meet, Google Classrooms, all these applications, collaboration tools, being able to communicate. It was more of a learning curve. Fortunately, whether they were teachers or students or end users or staff or customers, they got familiar with these tools that we put in place. We've always have a mind to see how we can improve things for the customer. We're working towards smart building solutions, IoT solutions, reducing costs, reducing energy, good for the climate, but also helping us being proactive in terms of monitoring, analysis. So all these ideas, they ultimately have a benefit, and they're inbuilt to help the end customer ultimately. Yes, it is a journey. It's a journey that as a company, as a group, you'll always go to. This pandemic has probably fast-tracked some of the ideas that we had. So, we're looking to implement ever more solutions to make the customer experience better, more seamless, keep them safe. People feel uncomfortable sometimes meeting in person and physically sending paperwork. So we're deploying more and more solutions as we go along. But yes, as we deploy IT and digital infrastructure, ultimately, like you said, and it's very important, it's for the benefit of a customer. And that customer can be internal, it can be external. But ultimately, it's not for the sake of IT itself that we put these solutions in. We do it for the benefit of the customer. Unfortunately, by focusing on the customer, it means that the solutions that we develop, whether we're affected by a pandemic or a disruption, ultimately the customer was at the center of why we were delivering certain solutions in the first place.
Okay, like other organizations, other sectors, you must be under the spell of lockdown for a couple of months or 3 months to be very precise. Were you able to manage it, or how did you do that? Did you push your workers to work from home or remote offices? What is your strategy if workers were working from home? What was the percentage? And what is the situation now? Have you called them back to office? And during that period, if you remember, there are many organizations got hacked. by ransomware. They asked for millions of dollars. But then in our region, particularly, we haven't seen that much of, there was no noise till also, there is no news, right? So what is your security strategy now, then also?
Okay, so first I'll tackle the question of remote working. So we're based in Abu Dhabi in the UAE. So we're bound by the guidelines issued by the government. So initially it was 30%, then it's currently 60%, but the trend is obviously going upwards. Our primary focus is the safety of the staff, the safety of the employees, the safety of the customers. So, everything we were guided by, yes, the government, guidance, and also how we can protect our staff in terms of, making sure that, there's sort of safety bubbles and if anything was to happen to a particular individual, we would contain it so it doesn't spread to everybody. So, IT as a department, I can tell you 20 years ago in banking, I was working remotely. So it's not anything new to us as a department or as a, IT department, working remotely, supporting remotely. We constantly work with global teams. We're constantly delivering partners with people we never even meet ever. So it's a very natural thing for IT. And, if you were to ask any sort of company, I think probably the people first and foremost who felt most comfortable with remote working was IT. The only difference is the tools that we were using, whether there was the Office 365 suite or the Teams or all the different features that we had. Suddenly, everybody else started to utilize these features, and so maybe that adoption of all this, we talk about, we deploy all this great stuff, and it's nice to actually see it being used, because sometimes you can deploy great technology, but the utilization rate or the adoption rate, people are busy and they don't always get the time to fully garner the benefits of such tools. But that has increased, but IT, we felt quite comfortable, wherever people are based, whether they're physically in front of us, whether they're working remotely. The nature of GCC, I would say the nature of, these countries is you're never going to have huge teams on the ground. It doesn't work this way. You're going to work in collaboration with partners. You're going to work with people in other parts of the world. You don't have huge standing workforces. It's not that the sort of environment where you keep huge standing workforces as you do in other countries. People come to the country, they work. When they're not working, they leave. So you don't tend to have huge pools. So, you're used to working with this kind of hybrid approach of working with people on-prem and also externally. So for us, it was a natural thing anyway. It didn't really affect IT.
Okay.
Now, in terms of security, ransomware, obviously, it's been a big thing over the years. It's not a case of, if you'll get hit, it's a case of when. And this is the strategy IT has had for a while. And we've always invested in sort of threat, threat intelligence. We have a managed service managed security partner. We have SIEM solutions in place. We have E5 security. We have a lot of security solutions within our organization, because pandemic or no pandemic, if you get caught with a ransomware attack, you get caught with anything, it's huge disruption, and we can't afford that in a normal environment, never mind a pandemic. So it's always there, but we're defending hundreds of thousands of attacks a day. They have to get through once. So you see the odds are always, very challenging against us, but thankfully we've been okay during this period. And yes, there is a concern that as people are more remote, identity management, access management, these are really, really important topics now that can't be taken for granted, because you're not physically seeing the person in front of you now. Most of the time they're remote. So you want to make sure that the person you're working with, or the access they have to systems, two-factor authentication, security, access control is really taken as a very important and serious point at this moment in time.
Now the question comes that as things are opening up, situation is becoming more clear. Your organization is doing fairly well in the region. Are you planning something new in terms of new technology intervention, automation kind of thing, RPA at the back end? You must be having certain kind of ERP to eliminate human errors. and secondly, adding to the business agility also, because I know you for a long time. You are very versatile. You kind of put two hats. One is the IT leader, another is the business leader. So, do you have certain plans of that?
Yes, I think one thing that has become very clear now, and I've mentioned it before as well in previous talks, is that there was a time where we used to talk about digital transformation and how people will be left behind. Now, and I've mentioned this a couple of times, and I'll mention it again. I think now it's not a case of leaving people behind. I think companies are going to get locked out of markets if they
Mm.
don't have the digital platforms to reach their customers, if they don't have the way of communicating especially in the coming months, especially as we deal with localized lockdowns, as people feel uncomfortable and slowly are starting to emerge and return to normality. They're going to find it very, very difficult to communicate, get customers, whether they're in real estate or education or facilities management or other businesses. You see some tech companies have done exceptionally well. The people, the Amazons of the world, and people like this who were able to reach their customers, and others, the traditional retail outlets have suffered heavily. So I think this is a trend that's going to happen. Certain people, certain companies will fall behind, others will move forward. In terms of Bloom, yes, fortunately as well. I mean, we're always looking at new initiatives, always looking at new deployments of applications that can, help our customers. Whether it's making their processes or interaction with our company or buying our real estate easier, or whether it's taking lessons or learning or getting access to our facilities management, and we had bigger plans, and we have bigger plans for developing almost smart communities, smart city solutions, which involve a lot more things in terms of IoT, in terms of drones and autonomous vehicles and smart waste management systems, and all the sort of things that you have in terms of smart buildings. So we're constantly looking and exploring, and whether there's a pandemic or not, we believe that that's the way forward anyway. They save costs, they improve the lifestyle of the customer, they improve efficiencies, energy efficiencies, they give deeper insights and analytics. So this is the way forward anyway. And whatever the situation is happening around, I think that people were already very cost conscious in the last couple of years, few years anyway, and that won't change. But you want to make sure you get value for your money as well. And if you start to see real sort of return on investments of these sort of different solutions, but ultimately, you're making life a lot better for the end customer as well.
Absolutely. All right. The other question also I'm hearing from the senior leaders that budget is becoming a constraint. It's huge crunch is happening, and maybe for next couple of quarters there will be a dearth, in that sorts. So are you seeing similar thing is happening with you also, uh, that you are getting your existing or a future pipeline that you have planned and given it to the CEO or the CFO, are saying, coming back and saying, Mr. Mubarak, hold on.
Yeah, I think, see, budget is an interesting thing in my view. I think, there was always we were very cost conscious anyway. And, we were always trying to operate with a maximum efficiency anyway. So, yes, obviously, with the impact of the pandemic, there was a big crunch and but I think it's the way I would see it's more of a redirection. Yeah. So there were some solutions that might have taken precedence in terms of pre-pandemic, and certain solutions now where the urgency to reach to customers and the urgency to sort of enhance that customer experience has probably increased. Because why? Because maybe people now not so comfortable walking to a building. Now maybe they want to have virtual tours of your apartments. They want to have a virtual sort of augmented reality or virtual reality sort of look at your facilities, or maybe they want more sort of ed tech or sophisticated educational sort of learning tools. So I would see it more of a redirection of budget. I can't ever say that in the last few years people were cost conscious anyway. And yes, like I say, I mean, I would say fortunately our lines of business, whether it's real estate. People still need a place to live in a pandemic. Whether it's facilities management, you still need your apartments cleaned, COVID-free, and secured and maintained. Whether it's education, yes, people. I have a child myself, and he still needs to study. So fortunately, our lines of business, they are relevant because they affect the person's life. They need all these elements. So we weren't end retail in terms of stores. We weren't the kind of yes, we have hospitality. So yes, that was affected quite heavily in terms of hotels, but they adapted and changed as well. I think there is always this. There will always be this case of cost consciousness. I think we are in those times, and that's just the reality. It's probably for me more about getting the best value for the money that you are investing and making sure there's a good return on investment. And justifying the need to make that spend, because you don't want to just spend and in terms of a wastage kind of spend. You want to make sure that there's good value in whatever you're spending.
And in that sense, you are very lucky that you have got supportive management and CFOs, so that I can see, a confident Mr. Mubarik Hussain, unlike others who say it's not like that, right? Anyways,
It's
yeah.
tough. It's tough. I can't say that. I'm sure everybody's been through a challenging time, and there hasn't been anybody who hasn't been affected. So I do feel that, because ultimately, maybe as IT and I myself, there was initiatives I'd put months of effort into. Suddenly overnight, no. Why? Because you physically couldn't move people into the country. You physically couldn't move equipment around. So suddenly, you have no choice but to say, sorry, this is not the right time for this. But then there's other urgencies that come into place, whether it's remote teaching or learning or people being able to work. This is the natural sort of, some things I find that, you don't have control of everything, ultimately in life, and you have to adapt and adjust to the realities you find yourself in. So I do totally feel that, I do sympathize, and I understand, because I'm one of the people who've had to deal with those challenges as well.
Okay, so that brings me to ask you the last question of this interview. What would be a piece of advice or suggestion to the peer group or the senior leaders who are struggling mentally as to how to figure out what to do from budget standpoint? Even I think budgeting is something which leads to all the innovation. So then the technology decision making.
So this is a challenge, obviously, in these times. I'm sure everybody, myself included, has, there's only, if it was up to you, you would have infinite resources, but you will have finite resources, but you have to deliver the best thing you can. In my view, I always believe, look at the long-term solutions anyway. Look at solutions that make life for your customers easier, internal stakeholders, external stakeholders easier, make their lives better, help them in their sort of, help your businesses grow, sort of develop solutions with security in mind. So if you have that mindset anyway, whether there's a pandemic, there's not a pandemic, whether there's another disruption, there's not, your company will continue to grow, because the main thing is you want to breathe life into your company and help it continue to grow, help it to continue to serve your customers, and it will only grow if your customers are happy as well, and your internal staff are happy, your customers are happy. So always promote those positive things. Yes, if you can't do everything, prioritize. It doesn't mean you have to do everything right now. Maybe you can move some projects or some things to the following year. But have a roadmap, have a plan and a vision as to how you see things, maybe in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years down the line. But always keep moving forward. Whatever you do, don't just go into a cut and a shutdown and a stop, because one thing is if you grow, you might be successful, you might not. But the high possibility is you will. If you start shutting down and you stop doing everything, you guaranteed will fail. It's no question about what the end result will be. So I think always try and maintain a positive attitude, and yes, there's a reality of the world around us. I'm not saying we're not aware of what's happening, and it is challenging times, but always try to remain a little bit optimistic as to how the world will ultimately sort of turn out in the end.
All right. Thank you very much. Pleasure talking to you. And once again, thank you for sparing your time to speak to CIOTV.live. Stay safe and have a very good week ahead.
Thank you very much, Sanjay. It's a pleasure to talk to you as always, and thank you for this interview. And likewise, stay safe, and wish you all the best as well. Take care.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Take care. Yeah.